Adam Silver's name now sits at the center of a growing firestorm, and this one goes beyond basketball. With federal investigations closing in, the NBA and WNBA are facing allegations not just of biased officiating, but of organized crime links and manipulated outcomes tied to betting interests. The focus is sharpest where the controversy hits hardest. The games of Caitlin Clark, questionable calls, suspicious patterns, and rising stakes have sparked intense scrutiny from Congress, casting doubt on the league's integrity. Silver's public apology may have been an attempt at damage control, but behind the scenes, the clock is ticking and Washington wants answers.
If you're here for the real story and not the filtered version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe.
The scope of this investigation goes far deeper than one player or one commissioner. A potential web of compromised referees, profit-driven partnerships with sportsbooks, and rigged outcomes could collapse fan trust in both leagues. The WNBA, with shared officials and financial overlap, is especially vulnerable, and Clark's role in high-profile games has made her a focal point of the probe. If misconduct is confirmed, consequences can include federal charges, massive lawsuits, and sweeping regulatory reform. This isn't just a scandal. It's a full-scale integrity reckoning for professional basketball. Adam Silver just issued a public apology to Caitlin Clark after a tidal wave of backlash, and it's not just about one player or one call. The NBA and WNBA are now under full-blown federal investigation for what could be the biggest scandal in modern sports history. We're talking gambling, game fixing, and organized crime. This is serious. Federal investigators are looking at everything: referee conduct, suspicious calls, the league's connections with betting companies, and potential ties to actual organized crime rings. And it's not just the NBA. Because of their shared refs, ownership groups, and internal operations, the WNBA is caught in the crossfire too. Let's be clear, this isn't just some bad look or PR nightmare. This is a government stepping in with subpoenas, criminal investigations, and congressional deadlines. The Senate Commerce Committee is demanding records from the league about everything from betting partnerships to game officiating since 2020. And they're not asking nicely. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver has until October 31st to hand over the documents or risk escalating the crisis into full federal litigation. What triggered this wave of accountability? Suspicious officiating and betting patterns, specifically in games involving Caitlin Clark. Fans have been calling out for weeks. Questionable calls, bizarre officiating patterns, misfouls, and then suddenly betting lines shift. Combine that with the rise in legal sports gambling across the U.S., and it creates the perfect storm. If games were being manipulated to protect betting outcomes or favored teams, that's not just unethical, it's criminal. And now we're talking about potential match fixing, potential referee corruption. And if the ongoing investigations uncover actual organized crime links, we're looking at criminal charges, lawsuits, massive fines, a total collapse in league credibility. This isn't the league brushing something under the rug anymore. This is a league being dragged into the light, with Congress and federal agencies combing through emails, call logs, referee payment histories, and betting data. And at the center of it all, Clark's name keeps coming up. The officiating in her games has sparked so much controversy that it's now become evidence. Investigators are reportedly looking into whether any specific outcomes were influenced to shift betting results or maintain viewer engagement, and whether that influence came from within the league, the referees, or external interests connected to betting platforms and criminal networks. And here's where things get even more disturbing. There are documented patterns that suggest certain referees may have been calling games in ways that statistically benefit betting interests. Suspicious calls, unexplained technicals, wild point swings, all tied to the biggest names in the league, where the most money and the most eyes are focused. For the NBA and WNBA, that's a disaster. Sports betting partnerships have been a cash cow, but those same deals might now be their downfall. Because once you're financially entangled with sportsbooks, any suspicion of bias, manipulation, or insider interference starts to look a lot more plausible, especially when betting firms are profiting off those exact outcomes. Now, the WNBA is especially vulnerable. It shares officials with the NBA. It relies on those same back-end relationships. It's trying to grow to build credibility. But how can it do that if fans think the outcomes are being rigged? Clark's popularity has brought in a whole new audience. Record-breaking viewership, sold-out arenas, millions of dollars in merchandise. But if that growth is built on a foundation that's being manipulated for betting profits, it won't last. And Clark herself could become collateral damage in a scandal she had nothing to do with, / investigation. That's what makes Adam Silver's public apology such a big deal. He didn't just say sorry for a few bad calls. He acknowledged the pressure Clark is under, and the reality that league integrity is now being questioned at the federal level. And that's not something you walk back. Because if this investigation confirms even part of what's being alleged, it's not just one scandal. It's a systemic failure. One that could take down careers, void games, and trigger a total overhaul of how professional basketball handles officiating, betting, and internal governance. If the probe uncovers that referees were compromised, or worse, actively profiting from insider betting information, it could lead to indictments. The feds are already looking into connections between league officials and criminal betting networks. This goes way beyond a few blown whistles. This could touch the core of how the league functions. Getting it. And the impact isn't limited to the NBA. The WNBA, which has spent years trying to prove its legitimacy, is now fighting to separate itself from the NBA's mess. But with shared infrastructure, it's nearly impossible, especially when Clark's games are some of the most scrutinized. Every time she's fouled without a call, every time a ref seems to swing momentum in a key game, it adds to the fire. Viewers start to ask if the league is protecting certain storylines, or if they're protecting certain betting interests. And here's where it gets even darker. If these patterns were intentional, if outcomes were even subtly influenced to benefit financial partners or to manipulate betting odds, that's federal racketeering territory. The very thing that took down boxing commissions in the past. The very reason Congress is stepping in now. This isn't about sports anymore. This is about criminal liability. It's also about public trust. Fans don't tune in to watch a script. They tune in to see athletes compete, not outcomes prearranged for profit. The second that illusion is broken, viewership drops, sponsors pull out, networks reconsider contracts. And what happens to the players? The ones who train every day, risk their bodies, and play through injury, only to find out that their game might have been manipulated? It's demoralizing. It's infuriating. It's grounds for civil litigation. This isn't some internet conspiracy. This is Congress, the Senate Commerce Committee, the Department of Justice. Real investigations with real consequences. And they're already pulling records, pulling contracts, pulling referee histories. Everything is under review. And if they find what they're looking for, if they prove games were fixed, if they prove refs were corrupt, if they prove league officials look the other way or benefit financially, this will become the biggest scandal in American sports since the Black Sox. Right now, Adam Silver is walking a tightrope. He knows the stakes. And while his apology to Caitlin Clark may have been genuine, it was also strategic, a move to show accountability before being forced into a corner. Because when the federal government is knocking on your door, PR spin doesn't cut it. This entire situation is a wake-up call. For leagues, for sportsbooks, for fans, for players. Legal sports betting isn't going away, but if these leagues want to survive, they need airtight oversight, transparency, accountability. And right now they don't have it. So here we are, on the brink. A federal investigation with the power to reshape sports betting regulation across the country. A league trying to protect its legacy while navigating a credibility crisis. And at the center of it, Caitlin Clark, arguably the most valuable player in the women's game, now being dragged into a scandal she didn't create, but may not be able to avoid. This is only the beginning. The fallout hasn't even started. October 31st is a deadline, but the clock's already ticking. What do you think the league should do? Should Clark speak out? Can the NBA and WNBA recover from this if the worst is proven true? Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like if you're just as shocked as we are. Share this if more people need to understand the magnitude of what's happening. And hit subscribe, because the story is far from over and it's only getting deeper. Because the truth is, once federal investigators step in, there's no more room for spin. No more distractions. No more blaming bad nights from refs or calling it fan overreaction. This isn't a rumor mill. This is a federal government with full legal authority, opening the vaults. And the leagues? They're exposed. Caitlin Clark being at the center of this is more than just unfortunate timing. It's emblematic of the problem. She didn't ask to be the face of a scandal. She just wanted to play basketball. But when your games are the most watched, the most bet on, the most talked about, and the officiating is consistently inconsistent, that's no longer just sports talk. That's evidence. The feds are already asking the hard questions. Why do calls always seem to lean a certain way in Clark's games? Who benefits when that happens? Are refs making mistakes, or are they following a script? And are betting patterns aligning too perfectly with officiating trends? If the answer to any of those is yes, if anything was rigged, nudged, or influenced by money, then the fallout will be unlike anything the NBA or WNBA has ever dealt with. And let's talk about the money, because that's what this always comes back to. The NBA and WNBA have both leaned heavily into legal sports betting partnerships over the last few years. Sponsorship deals, data sharing agreements, ad campaigns pushing betting during broadcasts. The leagues tied themselves to the gambling industry like their lives depended on it. But now that connection is the very thing threatening to unravel them. Because the second money enters the officiating equation, the second outcomes become more valuable because of gambling profits. That's where the line gets crossed. And right now, that line looks completely erased. Congress isn't just demanding records. They're looking at every financial relationship between league officials and sports betting platforms. Every communication. Every document going back to 2020. Every referee assignment. Every questionable call. Every spike in betting activity tied to specific games. And they're asking, who knew? Who allowed this? Who profited? If the investigation reveals that league officials either turn a blind eye or directly benefited from these patterns, it's over, not just for the individuals involved, but for the trust fans have in these leagues. You can't come back from proven corruption and expect people to cheer the same way. You can't broadcast games with DraftKings logos in the background and expect people to forget that a ref might have had money on the spread. This is bigger than bad optics. This is a legal and ethical implosion. And the WNBA? It's in a uniquely dangerous position because it's still growing. It doesn't have the financial cushion the NBA does. It's trying to build viewership, sell tickets, bring in new fans. And right when it finally has that spotlight, thanks in large part to Clark, now it's being dragged into a federal investigation for rigging that very spotlight. That could ruin everything. If even perception takes root that Clark's games were manipulated for betting purposes, then the whole league's legitimacy crumbles. Fans will walk. Sponsors will pull out. And growth? It stops cold. And let's be real, fans already had questions. From day one, people noticed bizarre calls in Clark's games. The missed fouls, the overreactions, the clear imbalance. Some called it bias. Others called it protection. But now, with federal investigators involved, we're no longer talking about favoritism. We're talking about fraud. And the fallout isn't just reputational. It's potentially criminal. This is where the organized crime angle makes everything even more dangerous. If investigators can trace betting patterns back to criminal networks, if referees or league insiders were paid off, or even loosely connected to those groups, then this escalates from scandal to full-scale legal warfare. That's where you get RICO cases. That's where you get federal indictments. That's where careers end. And the idea that someone like Caitlin Clark, who did nothing wrong, is now caught in the middle of this, that's what makes Silver's apology feel so hollow. Because it's not just about protecting Clark's image. It's about realizing the league might have used her and exposed her at the same time. She's the most visible figure in the game right now. So when something shady goes down, it's her name that gets pulled into headlines. She didn't benefit from it. She didn't orchestrate it. But she's the one the public sees. And if she ever decides to speak out, if she ever says she felt like a pawn, or worse, like a distraction for deeper corruption, it will be impossible to put this back in the box. The longer the league waits to be fully transparent, the worse it looks. Because the fans are watching. The players are watching. Congress is watching. And if the NBA or WNBA try to minimize what's happening, they'll only be making it worse. Because this isn't a moment you manage with PR. This is a moment that demands full accountability. Because if the leagues try to protect their image over the truth, then whatever comes next, they'll deserve. Let's also be very clear about what this means for sports betting as a whole. If this investigation proves corruption, it could force a complete reevaluation of how sports gambling is regulated in the U.S. You could see new federal laws, tighter restrictions, and major scrutiny on how leagues profit from partnerships that might also be undermining their own competitive integrity. It's the definition of conflict of interest. How can a league claim to ensure fair play while also directly profiting from the betting that depends on that fairness? This isn't theoretical anymore. It's real. And if the leagues don't take a hard stance, they risk letting this whole structure collapse. It doesn't matter how much money they're making from sports books. If trust is gone, the revenue will follow. Sad. So what does recovery even look like? At this point, nothing short of full cooperation with investigators. Every ref with suspicious calls needs to be benched. Every financial relationship with betting platforms needs to be audited. Every internal communication around betting and officiating needs to be exposed, because the alternative is unthinkable. If the NBA or WNBA are found to have ignored, or worse, participated in rigging outcomes to favor betting profits, then the backlash will be historic. The lawsuits, the charges, the damage to the game. It could be a once-in-a-generation implosion. And once again, at the center of it all, Caitlin Clark, a young player who just wanted to change the game, now forced to watch her name get dragged through headlines that have nothing to do with her actual performance. That's the collateral damage of a corrupt system. So here we are, with Adam Silver issuing apologies, with Congress issuing subpoenas, with fans losing faith and players asking questions. This is a reckoning. And no matter what the final investigation reveals, the fact that we even got to this point is a massive failure of leadership, accountability, and foresight. The league sold access to sports betting like it was harmless, like it was just part of the modern game. But now, they're facing the consequences. And the players, the ones who built this game, who play it with passion and integrity, are the ones left to deal with the wreckage. Because no matter how you spin it, we're now past the point of damage control. This isn't a one-day headline that gets buried under highlight reels and trade rumors. This is federal. This is criminal. And this is only going to get messier. Adam Silver's public apology to Caitlin Clark might have been the right move. But let's not forget, it only came after weeks of mounting backlash. After fans, media, and former players were screaming about the calls in her games. After social media dissected every no-call, every suspicious whistle, and started asking the hard questions the league tried to ignore. The apology wasn't proactive. It was reactive. And now, it might be too little, too late. Because Clark isn't just a rookie phenom. She's the centerpiece of the WNBA's recent surge in attention. When you're driving ticket sales, network deals, and ratings, the spotlight on you gets hotter by the second. And in her case, that spotlight has revealed a whole lot more than just talent. It's exposed inconsistencies, favoritism, and now, possibly manipulation tied to the billions of dollars pouring in from legalized gambling. The moment betting became fully integrated into the game, on screens and commentary, through sponsorships, the rules changed. The stakes changed. Every single call on the court now affects money, not just for fans placing bets, but for corporate interests, for sportsbooks, for the leagues themselves. And if even a sliver of this investigation confirms that refs made calls to sway betting outcomes, or that league officials turned their heads to protect a money machine, there's no walking it back. Every game becomes suspect. Every stat, every buzzer beater, every overtime finish. Suddenly it's not just drama, it's evidence. And Caitlin Clark? Her name is tied to this mess, whether she wants it or not. Close face. Think about what it does to a player when the world starts questioning not just how you play, but why things keep going a certain way in your games. It doesn't matter that she's innocent, that she's not behind the calls, or the money. Her face is what sells the league. Her name is in every betting app. Her performances are what sportsbooks use to set lines. So when things look shady, she gets dragged into it. And that's the real tragedy here. Because while the league was busy capitalizing on Clark's rise, selling out arenas, building broadcast packages around her, pushing her into every interview, they weren't protecting her from the machine they built. And now, that machine is under federal inspection. The NBA and WNBA linked themselves to sports betting for the revenue, but they didn't put the safeguards in place to protect the game or the players. And now, the very thing that was supposed to elevate the leagues might be what tears them down. This is about more than just one investigation. It's about trust. Can fans trust what they're watching? Can players trust that the outcomes are based on skill, not scripts? And can Clark trust that she's being elevated for her talent, not used as a pawn in a much bigger game that's out of her control? Because if this all collapses, she's the one left holding the bag, the one whose image gets twisted, the one whose games will forever be replayed with doubt, not because she cheated, but because the system around her did. That's why this moment matters so much, not just for Clark, not just for the WNBA or NBA, but for the future of professional sports. The line between competition and entertainment, between fair play and financial manipulation, has never been thinner. And this investigation might be what finally exposes how blurred it's become. So where do we go from here? The leagues need to come clean. Fully. Not just apologies. Not just statements. Full transparency. Full accountability. Clean house if they have to. Because if they don't, the next chapter won't be about investigations. It'll be about collapse. Comment below. Do you still trust what you're seeing on the court? Should leagues sever ties with sports betting altogether? What happens if this goes all the way to court? Like if you're following every twist. Share this if you think more people need to hear what's really going on. And subscribe, because this isn't the end. It's the start of something much bigger.